Hey everybody, this is Aaron Blakeman for my EDA 410 class, and this is our discussion on the Code of Ethics. I'm reading the let me say this correctly. I've read the Code of Ethics for Shelby County Public Schools, and one of the four major topics that was discussed in the Code of Ethics was behavior. And behavior is one of those things that we literally deal with every day in the classroom. We had to deal with it all the time with every student. There's somewhere or another we're going to deal with a behavior of some sort, whether it's good or bad behavior. So it's something we got to know about, and it's something we need to be, how I put it, well versed in knowing how to handle it and knowing what is right in the school system and what isn't. So, for instance, for Shelby County alone, their code of conduct states this, that Shelby County Public Schools is committed to maintaining a safe and supportive environment for everyone in our community. So, the goal of, knowing what behaviors are correct is, again, to having a safe place for people to learn and a safe place for them to get an education and wherever they are. Not even just, their education in the classroom, but, it deals with, when they're in the community, they're on campus, the classroom, the lunchroom, in the assemblies, the hallway, field trips, after-school programs, sporting events, and even on the bus. And all these things are something just to do with keeping them safe and getting them to a place where they can learn. And, when they're on field trips, things they can get from a field trip, but they want them to be safe in the middle of it so that nobody gets hurt. One of the other big things that was dealt with in the Code of Conduct was the levels of disciplinary action. And again, with behaviors, if there's bad behavior, there has to come some disciplinary action to that. If there's no discipline in behind the bad behavior, there's nothing that's going to help stop it. If you ignore a problem too long, it usually gets bigger. So that's why you have the levels of disciplinary action for problems of bad behavior in the classroom. And, this would be something I would maybe need to look at once or twice a week, specifically looking at the levels. But then, I would just know from, what to do in classroom as far as that for what they call level 1, which is the in-school measures. I would know that enough to a point I could use it for any time during the classroom, and that would go into almost daily use for just different, again, bad behaviors if necessary. So I would think that was one of the second most important ones that was talked about. And their School of Conduct mentions all the different levels they have for the levels of disciplinary action, starting with your in-school measures, which is what you can use actually in the classroom for the most part, and sometimes outside of the classroom. Then you have your in-schools alternative adjustment program, which is like an out-of-class program, something to help the student that's having a serious behavioral issue, almost like in-school suspension, basically, or something like that, where they're not in the classroom causing an issue. They're separated from everybody so they can do their work and focus. Then you have actual suspension from the school, expulsion, and if it is a serious enough issue, you have the 5th level, which is the legal measures. But again, for the most part, most of these will never have to be used except for the in-school measures. So that's the goal. We at least hope. We don't want to have to use anything else. And again, like I said, I would need to know those levels of disciplinary action. So I see that as something that would be extremely important. Excuse me. The third thing I noted to be a main topic would be bullying. And, for me, I hope it's not an issue I really had to deal with, except very, very much occasionally. I mean, far and few in between. We hope, yet it can be something we had to deal with weekly. And, bullying is one of those dangerous things that not only affects, as far as the students, but it also affects the adults in the building. Because sometimes bullying doesn't come, just from one student to another, but it can come from an adult to another. Because an adult just, they have as much of a behavior issue as the student. That's why, the first thing was, the behavior and the rules of conduct, how they wanted them to act, those also apply to the adults as well. And for Shelby County, their school district, again, they will not tolerate bullying of any sort, of any kind, however it is, whether it's cyberbullying, stalking, anything, verbal bullying, physical, any of that is not allowed in their district. So, again, my third most important one. And then the last important main topic I seen was non-discrimination. And I say this because it wouldn't be something technically I would have to go over weekly, but for my own personal self, it would need to be something I need to address for me daily. And I don't say that like I'm a discriminative person, because I don't. I love all kids, I love all people. And I'm not sitting there saying like, I just have issues with people. But then I also know that I don't want to act differently in any way towards one student over another because of something I know that they're doing or something about them. I don't want to treat some student differently because I know they're doing some things that the Bible doesn't agree with. I need to treat them just as important as someone that's, acts a little, I don't know how to put it, but you know what I mean, I assume, and I hope you get what I'm saying with this. I want to make sure that I don't treat any student differently, even though they disagree with what I believe and what the Word of God says. And, even in our elementary schools, students are taught some things that are just out there and things that's just completely against my morals and my beliefs, but yet I still got to treat that student like they're important. I'm not saying I won't treat them importantly, but I'm saying I want to make sure I don't basically I want to make sure that I give every student that equal opportunity. Not one person's given a little more special treatment than another one because the other one's just a little different. So I seen that one personally as one of the main topics as well. Do I feel that the items listed are easy or challenging to address in the classroom? For the most part, I see these four as, simple things to address. But yet it's something I have to work at. And I put this in here, I said it needs to be consistent. Right now, I work with the school system, and one of the things we're taught over and over and over that's probably the most important thing to them is consistency. You can do one discipline to somebody for one thing, but if you don't do it again the next time or do the same discipline for somebody else, you're inconsistent. And students notice those things, and when there's inconsistencies, there's areas for things to just go wrong. So I believe this shouldn't be a hard thing to do. Any of these four main topics I mentioned are not difficult, but yet I see them as things that need to be consistent. Again, I dealt with what I said, behavior, but then not only behavior, when I mentioned the last one, non-discrimination, I want to make sure that I'm consistent to treat every student well, that every one of them gets that fair shot from me. Excuse me. So, like I said, I don't see these to be difficult, but I want to be consistent in behind them. All right, now, as a future teacher, why is a document such as this code of conduct important for students? Well, one, this is important for the students to know these code of conducts because it represents what the school expects of them. They need to know that the school says, hey, we expect you to act this way, and there's consequences when you don't line up to that. When you give somebody expectations, you hope they meet them. And sometimes when you label the expectations, they're going to do what you said. And granted, there's always somebody that's going to, have to, go against the status quo. Going to have somebody that's going to argue with what the code of conduct say. But, when you know that and you tell them that ahead of time, they know what they're expected to do. And it's important for the students to know these code of conduct, not only because, what the school expects them, but if they're not able to conform to that code of conduct, they're going to have problems staying at the school. They're going to have problems within the school. And, it'll go back to the levels of disciplinary action, depending on how many times they keep, not conforming to what the code of conduct says. It'll depend on, how dangerous and how, not just dangerous, but how bad and how far up in the levels their disciplinary action is. And, when you read through them, a lot of these codes of conduct, not only is it just good for how they're going to act in the classroom and, when they're out somewhere or any of the other 10 areas they're going to be labeled on, but, these codes of conduct are things that would give the students good moral character in general for all of life if they can follow these things. Now, as a future teacher, why is a document such as this code of conduct important for the parents? Well, the parents need to realize that, if your child is not able to meet the code of conduct, they're going to have to do something about it. Whether that means discipline their child to getting them to, conform to that code of conduct, or homeschooling their child. And I know that sounds a little rough, but that code of conduct is that expectation so that we can keep a safe school and keep the classroom where it needs to be, where it's a place of learning and not just utter chaos. So, like I said, you're either going to have to discipline them or maybe even homeschool. And, also the parents need to know this because they're expected, when they're doing anything that's involved with that school district, they're expected to follow those same codes of conduct just like their child is. The things that their kid can't get away with, they're not able to get away with either. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it.